I'm Sarah, a 34-year-old woman, and for the past few weeks, I've been in the midst of a family situation that's been weighing heavily on my mind. After reading countless posts about family drama and complex relationships, I realized my situation was both unique and infuriating, and I needed to seek advice. Here's what's been going on. My younger sister-in-law, Emily, is 27 and engaged to a guy named Alex, an Irish banker. They're planning to get married next spring. Emily wants to host her wedding at my house, a place I've spent years making a home. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not some show-off, but I do happen to have a 4-bedroom house with a spacious garden and a pool. My husband and I worked hard for this home. It wasn't handed to us. Emily and Alex, on the other hand, are planning an outdoor wedding, which, in theory, could be a beautiful thing. The ceremony would take place in our garden, with dinner afterward in our large living room. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was being asked to host their entire wedding. The more I looked at it, the more I started to feel that something about this wasn't sitting right. Now, let me give you some background. My husband, Ryan, and I have been married for 8 years. We met in college, dated for 4 years before getting married, and we've built a life together. Ryan doesn't come from wealth. His parents, Martin and Rachel, were hard-working people, but they were far from well off. My in-laws didn't exactly encourage Emily to pursue education or work. Instead, they catered to her every whim, even though she dropped out of college at 20 and refused to seek any kind of employment. I come from a wealthier background, but my parents never handed me anything. My dad instilled in me a strong work ethic. He told me, if you want a career, earn it. If you want to go to college, get a scholarship or take out a loan. At the time, I thought he was tough, but now, looking at Emily's situation, I see how valuable that lesson was. I worked hard to buy my first property, a house I'm proud of. My dad helped me with the down payment, but I had to work my tail off to pay the mortgage and eventually buy him out of the rest of the house. Now, I'm here with this beautiful home, but I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing by allowing Emily to use it for her wedding. I'll be honest, Emily and I have never gotten along. From the beginning, I tried to help her by suggesting she finish her education and get a job, but she was too proud and too stubborn to listen. She never once took our suggestions seriously. Worse, her parents continually coddled her, even when it was clear she wasn't making any effort to contribute to society. Meanwhile, Ryan and I were scrimping to make ends meet, both of us working hard and trying to build a future. Emily's upcoming wedding was yet another reminder of her entitled attitude. She couldn't afford a venue, and her family didn't have the money to help, so she started asking me to host a wedding. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that she wasn't even planning on paying me rent for using my home. It's one thing to offer your house for a small gathering, but this was a huge event. I hesitated, but in the end, I agreed to let her have the wedding at our house. Then came the shocker. On the day I agreed to let her use our home for her wedding, I found out, through a casual conversation with my husband, that I wasn't even invited to the event. Let that sink in. My own home, my space, was going to be used for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. I couldn't believe it. It's not like I hadn't been accommodating. I'd gone out of my way to prepare the rooms for her guests, arrange for catering, and even hired a cleaner to get the house spotless. Yet, Emily had the audacity to tell me that she had no intention of inviting me or my husband to the wedding. To make matters worse, she told me that she had convinced her new fiancé, Alex, and his wealthy family that the house was hers. She even lied to him, claiming this was the family estate. Emily's plan was simple: impress her fiancé's family by making them believe she was rich and had it all. To her, our house wasn't a home. It was just a backdrop to her fantasy. She had planned the entire wedding without consulting anyone. And when I asked why we weren't invited, she responded with a cold and condescending remark. "Oh, I didn't invite you because my parents think you're too toxic. You're just not a good influence." I was speechless. The nerve of this woman. She had the audacity to kick us out of our own home, to create a fake life for herself and her fiancé. When I confronted her about it, she tried to justify her actions, saying that it was weird for a married couple to live with their in-laws, and that I could always stay at a hotel. I was furious, but what really hit me was her complete lack of respect. She didn't care about our feelings, our home, or the sacrifices we had made to get where we were. It was all about her and her fantasy of wealth and status. I had enough. I stormed out of the room, but before I could get too far, my husband, who had been sleeping, came rushing out in a panic. He was just as shocked as I was when he heard the news. "Wait, what? We're not invited," he exclaimed. His face turned red with fury. He couldn't understand how Emily could do this to us, especially after all we'd done for her. The next day, I knew I had to take a stand. I wasn't going to let Emily manipulate me any longer. I was done with her lies and her manipulation. I refused to let her create a facade in our home, and I made it clear that I wasn't going to support her wedding plans, especially if it meant sacrificing my own dignity. Ryan and I went to visit my in-laws to confront them about Emily's behavior. They knew about the situation, but hadn't said a word to us. They assumed we were okay with it. My husband lost his temper. "How could you let her treat us like this? How could you think it was okay to exclude us from the wedding?" he yelled. In the end, we made it clear that there would be no wedding at our house unless Emily respected us and our space. She could either come clean about her lies and invite us, or she could go somewhere else. I wasn't going to be part of her delusional world any longer.